During the course of the 14th World Congress, there are a series of parallel events happening in and around the major sessions, and one of the most inspiring of those programs is a week of activity, interaction, learning, sharing, engagement of a group of young professionals from around the globe. And if you're one of that group, would you mind putting up your hand? I suspect they're all sitting together. Yes, they are. Please welcome the young professionals who've been with us today. And bearing in mind the comments of Professors Galler and Turner, I think it's appropriate that we perhaps hear from some of the young professionals on their reflections on the day's discussions and proceedings. Would you mind identifying who you are, please, and your perhaps a one breath background? We have a microphone over here, please.
Thank you very much. So I think in the name of all the young professionals, first I want to say a big thank you for inviting us all here, and we all feel honored to be part of it. So now, I want to just focus on these 4 points that I really like to say again. So what I learned today is first is the context. The context is very important for the different cities and the heritage. You cannot work with the community if you forget the context of your village or your city. So be site-specific with the community engagement and look at the possibilities you have. The second one is the balance between top-down and bottom-up processes. First, of course, top-down is very important, but if you just from high to low, the community is not going to feel very motivated to work. So please try to engage the community and motivate them in their own way. So the third thing is financing is not that big of an issue. You can just try more with less. That's very important. I'm an architecture student from Vienna at the TU, and we really have a lot of projects with very low budget. So even low budget can have amazing long-term effects on the community. And of course, have this creative approach to it. So the last point that I would like to say is set the right structure. It has to be a mix between theoretical and practical. First, a plan is of course a help, but also a tool of communication within the structure. But it's also a measurement in the long term and also helps in retrospective to see, did we try to make this plan happen or did we have some failures? The second one is the space we would like to work. Online is a very important tool to attract youth. And physical. Of course, in different settings, for example, in the office or like office settings, communities doesn't feel really invited to engage. I really liked, for example, the walk through the city and like learning alive. And the last one is time. Try to be patient with the communities. The human factor is not one that likes to be rushed. And now I'm going to get the mic to my colleague Laurent.
So hi everyone, my name is Laurent Généreux and I'm a graduate architecture student and urban designer from Quebec City. I'd like to first thank Madame Julie Lemieux, who mentioned all the projects that we do at Université Laval. I personally feel very engaged in the Old Quebec. That's where I live. I also participate in my Citizens Committee, which is an integral part of the dialogues table. And what I've learned from the discussions today, and also learning from my own experience as an urban designer, is that collective intelligence of the community is really important. For sure, when you reach out to the community, you sometimes get some input that might seem utopian or unrealistic or unfeasible. But when you put together many inputs, you most often get one clear direction you can work with. Also, I like to, when someone mentioned that monuments can have different meanings and that we must take into account all these different meanings, because monuments do have art history or historical significance, but they can also have a very important meaning for the local communities. And sometimes this local meaning can be worth as much as the great meaning. And sometimes it's also the best way to engage the community into the preservation of that monument. Also, not to forget the importance of capacity enabling. Not everyone has the same expertise, and this is something that I've witnessed myself. Obviously, going to a public hearing as an urban designer, I don't necessarily have the same understanding of the issues as everybody else around the table, but every opinion is important. We just need to enable the capacity of all stakeholders to take part in the meeting. Also, to use many different methods to engage the community. Every method has its own pros and cons. Sometimes it can be tantalizing for people to go on and in front and talk with a bike, but some prefer online consultation, others prefer workshops. I think it's very enriching if you use many different methods. And I would like to end with the notion of scale. Sometimes, World Heritage seems like something big that might sound out of touch for some people. But if you empower a community at a scale that it can grasp, then they can become invaluable allies in the preservation of the monuments. Thank you.
Well, I think we should acknowledge those interventions. For a brief time now, I would welcome other interventions from the floor and would encourage you to make them similarly cohesive, high-level, drawing ideas and threads together rather than delving into the detail. Are there some others who would like to make a contribution at this point? One down here, please.
Sí, Otilia Paredes, Arequipa, Perú. Lo que pude realmente captar de este día tan maravilloso es que el mejor patrimonio que tiene la humanidad es finalmente el ser humano. Y en esta época donde la tecnología nos ha llevado a menos interacción y comunicación los unos con los otros, considero que proyectos como imágenes son un ejemplo a seguir y que definitivamente una gran herramienta y un arma que tenemos es empoderar a las comunidades para ser la mejor arma en la preservación de nuestro patrimonio cultural. Gracias.
Thank you. I'd invite either a further contribution or another point. Matthijs.
Well, I have a further contribution because I think there are two topics that are a little bit transversal to what we've heard today, and they might serve as an idea for even the next topic of the next World Congress. And I think one topic is really the dimension of the historic urban landscape, which is integrating many factors that we have heard today and giving a stronger role to the communities. And the second topic is more on the methodological level. I think when we produce some recommendations, I would really appreciate it to make one recommendation on capacity building, and especially the role that the OWHC will play in the capacity building of site managers in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthijs. With your second point there, I would ask you to perhaps be ready to make a specific suggestion. I have some other suggestions which I will share with the meeting shortly, but that is currently not included. Are there other? Yes, there's one up the back here.
Thank you, Chair. I have a suggestion based on Mr. Michael Sterner's presentation, how he concluded today's work. So firstly, referring to the community engagement, and from the experience here in Vilnius and also Baltic states, we also observe that some activities of the community and perceptions are so dynamically changing together with generations and technologies parallelly, that we need to be focused not only about our own communities and the cities, but more widely. And my suggestion is that we need to think about giving more emphasis on the regional cooperation of the cities, because they possess variety of experiences that could be shared and need to be more openly shared. And technology allows us to do it. and the dynamics of changes in the social and cultural and economic contexts requires to do it. So I think that to be more progressive, we should consolidate regional knowledges, as regions have their own cultural specificity and identities that are very close to each other. And what I hear today, again, what was said that, okay, engagement of the local communities are perceived differently in the different parts of the world. That's why I still stress the need of raising importance of the regional cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it is very clear to me as an observer today that the whole question of cultural diversity and contextual relevance means that there are different techniques and different cities and communities are at different stages around the world, and it's therefore not appropriate to be too specific about methodologies or techniques, because what is currently best practice in Asia Pacific may be quite different from what is best practice in Northern Europe. And I also observe that we only heard from 2 of the regional coordinators. I think it's fair to say the 2 regions that have been most active in the community engagement space in the last 2 years. Okay, there's quite a few hands up, so we'll go over here, and then Leon and Tunis for interventions 12 and 6 respectively.
So I love the fact that we're talking about how the mechanisms for participation really depend on the context. As an anthropologist, that's very important to me. But something that is a theme that I've been hearing, no matter what the mechanism that's being used, is that it's going to take time, that it's a process. Participation is a process. It's not a one-time engagement. And that's something that, despite the specific mechanism used, is going to be a theme throughout.
Thank you, thank you. So I think we're now here. I can't do all at once, so I think this gentleman's next, then here, then there, and then just, we'll see how we go.
Merci, oui. Dans cette question un peu d'associer les communautés locales, je crois que les habitants, quand ils sont au centre un peu des actions de revalorisation du patrimoine, quand on ne s'intéresse pas seulement à la pierre, mais qu'on s'intéresse aux gens qui habitent la pierre, ils deviennent fiers de leur patrimoine. Ils ne vont pas le brader pour partir habiter dans des banlieues et dans d'autres endroits. Et donc, ils pourraient donc constituer un appui pour les communes, pour les municipalités, pour mener ces actions. Et parce que tout simplement, le patrimoine est leur affaire. Tout ça, quand on les considère comme les éléments clés de la revalorisation du patrimoine. Ce ne sont pas des gens qui sont dans des cages et on amène les touristes pour se balader dans les centres historiques pour les regarder. Au contraire, c'est eux, c'est leur affaire, le patrimoine. On fait tout pour leur bien-être et pour améliorer leur vécu. C'est là qu'ils deviennent vraiment efficaces.
Thank you. Now I think we're to Léon.
Merci. Je suis pleinement d'accord avec la remarque de Michael Turner qui est de dire qu'il n'y a pas de modèle réplicable de partout. Néanmoins, j'ai un peu le sentiment qu'il y a des conditions favorables à l'implication des communautés dans le processus de conduite de projet. Et il me semble, même si c'était, je dirais, en creux dans les différentes interventions, je voudrais insister sur quelques-unes de ces conditions incontournables. Et la première, je ne suis pas sûr de l'avoir vraiment entendue, c'est le fait que pour qu'il y ait implication des communautés, c'est avant tout et d'abord un projet politique. S'il n'y a pas de projet politique, je crois que le processus ne peut pas fonctionner. Et je voulais insister sur ce point-là. Et notamment, vous parliez de l'atelier des maires tout à l'heure. C'est peut-être une mise en débat à mettre sur l'implication du politique dans ce type de démarche. Ça me paraît un enjeu incontournable. La deuxième remarque, on a parlé à plusieurs reprises du savoir travailler ensemble, de l'intelligence collective, etc. Et donc tous ces processus d'implication des communautés passent par savoir dialoguer avec les acteurs locaux, savoir construire des projets avec les acteurs locaux. Mais je pense qu'il ne faut pas oublier aussi qu'il faut avoir le même type de démarche dans le mode opératoire. C'est-à-dire qu'ensuite, cette capacité de dialoguer, d'intégrer les communautés dans le processus doit être portée par les acteurs à l'intérieur de la ville ou à l'intérieur des structures chargées du mode opératoire, parce qu'ils ont souvent encore sur des habitudes de travailler tout seuls sans les communautés. Donc c'est un changement de mode opératoire et je pense qu'il ne faut pas l'oublier non plus dans les conditions de réussite du processus global.
Thank you. Oaxaca, please.
Sí, vimos diferentes experiencias en diferentes ciudades y no se trata ahora de regresar a las nuestras y tratar de implementar las experiencias de otras ciudades. Creo que la calle Imagen pues es una experiencia en Córdoba y probablemente se pueda parecer a otras en otras ciudades, pero no por eso todos ahora tenemos que hacer una calle Imagen en las nuestras. Y a lo que me quiero referir es que nuestras ciudades tienen su propia creatividad y lo que hay que dar es oportunidad a que la comunidad florezca. Y esto tiene que ser con tiempo. No podemos programar que la gente desarrolle un proyecto. Los proyectos son espontáneos. Y creo que eso podría ser un tema para un futuro congreso. La creatividad, la espontaneidad, el gozo, la esperanza del patrimonio. Y romper un día un poco la parte técnica, la parte de planeación, la parte en la que nosotros tratamos de encuadrar lo que las comunidades podrán hacer.
Thank you. Yes, I think to my observation, there are a number of elements that encouragement and facilitation for unleashing the energy and creativity in the community is one. But in some cultural contexts, even recognising the rights of local people is not yet happening. Or in other contexts, the notion that there should be consultation about decisions that affect local people is not happening. And so I'd encourage the meeting to be thinking in terms of the very high-level principles that OWHC might come to that would be universally relevant, but perhaps culturally and contextually specific. I'm going to ask for allow one more intervention, and then I'm going to share with you. Okay, David. Okay, John. Two more interventions. That's one there, one down here, and then I'm going to share with you some draft recommendations to see whether this is something that the meeting would like to do. And I emphasise I'm asking whether there is a consensus about having recommendations, not insisting. So.
Mi nombre es Walter de Benedetti, soy arquitecto de Colonia Sacramento, Uruguay. Quería hacer una pequeña reflexión. El patrimonio construido, nuestras ciudades, nuestros monumentos, nuestros edificios, son el rostro visible de nuestra identidad. Pero no deberíamos nunca olvidar que coexisten con ellos una expresión más sutil, más profunda, los modos de ser, de pensar, la visión del mundo, nuestra cultura, la comunidad que allí habita, que le dio forma y sentido. Si miramos el patrimonio en esa integralidad, nos damos cuenta que cada sitio es único, aunque en su exterior puedan parecerse. Y me parece que también dejamos de tener esta reflexión, si integrar a la comunidad o no, porque la comunidad es parte integral de ese patrimonio de la humanidad, o ese patrimonio de ese lugar. Por lo tanto, Me parece que una visión desde esa mirada más holística, más global, nos despeja algunas incógnitas sobre la participación de la ciudad, porque en realidad, o de la comunidad, porque en realidad es como si dijéramos que vamos a trabajar sobre el patrimonio sin el patrimonio. Trabajar el patrimonio de una comunidad o de una ciudad sin la comunidad es casi como olvidarnos también del edificio o de la ciudad o del barrio histórico. La integralidad es un concepto mucho más complejo, mucho más difícil de gestionar, pero a mi criterio mucho más auténtico, profundo y con visión de futuro. Muchas gracias.
Indeed. Thank you, sir. So our last intervention for now, I'll come back, is from John. It's just, no, please wait for the microphone. It's just the acoustics. Your voice is loud and you project well, but it's...
Thank you. We have today elevated the community to the prime level of decision making. I just don't want the experts in the room to think that we have forgotten them, and to thank them for the contributions they make to our efforts to conserve our heritage.
Look, thank you, John. Okay, I will take one more intervention in a minute, sir. I can see you waving. Can I just say, I think that has been the case today. As someone who practices particularly in Southeast Asia, I don't think that the community is generally elevated in practice. I think we've seen great examples of the community being elevated, but there are still some extremely hierarchical arrangements where there is exclusion of community interests, and therefore there's perhaps a baseline that we could strive towards. I know lots of people are waving, but I do. Yes, I can see that waving too, thank you. No one else is going to wave or I will pick on you. You have been warned. So we just have one quick intervention here, one quick intervention up the back, and then I would like to put some draft recommendations before the assembled meeting, please. Thank you. Sir.
Enrique Peramaz, alcalde del RIMA de Perú. Quería poner énfasis en un aspecto que consideramos importante, que es el tema de la educación. Educación para el patrimonio, porque se habla, y me parece muy saludable, la importancia de tener una participación ciudadana. Pero para que haya participación ciudadana tenemos que tener ciudadanos convencidos de la importancia del patrimonio. Hábitat 3 señalaba el derecho de las ciudades, pero para que exista ese derecho de ciudades tenemos que tener a los niños, adolescentes, a los jóvenes, digamos, encausados en que la importancia de proteger su ciudad. Yo creo que ese esquema que, por ejemplo, hemos escuchado, se viene realizando en algunos lugares y en el RIMA también, de tratar de trabajar con la escuela y de empoderar a los jóvenes, a los niños, va a ser de que a la larga este esfuerzo que venimos haciendo, creo, todos los líderes de diferentes ciudades pueda rendir sus frutos. Eso es todo.
Thank you. And is there a microphone up the back for Professor Gallup, please?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to emphasize something that you said, that is the rights of local people in some places are not yet recognized. And I want to say that yesterday, the wish of the indigenous people of Uluru Kata Tjuta World Heritage Site in Australia has been fulfilled. The management committee has banned the climbing of this sacred space, which the Aboriginal people have been trying for a long time. So even in a country with high capacity like Australia, these are issues. And I think the chair was really, what he pointed out is very important about rights. Now, two quick points. One is I want to emphasize what Matthias has said about capacity building, but I want to take people back to 1989 when Mandela was released from prison. He said capacity building, that, to be able to participate in governance, then Federico Mayer, who was there at that time, the former DG of UNESCO, went to the UNESCO board and introduced capacity building as a policy position. So I think this capacity to participate, capacity to govern are two critical things when we talk about capacity building. And finally, I just want to say that having worked as one of the 4 advisors on the UNESCO's gender policy, and also in the 33 years of dealing with World Heritage, whether it's cities or elsewhere, still tends to be very androcentric. I think that we really got to recognize the question of gender, women's participation as critical. Otherwise, we are not looking at 30% or 50% of our community groups that are critical for us. So I would recommend, Chair, if gender and intersectionality could actually come up, through your words, drafted as a recommendation, so that it can be addressed in this broader paradigm of community groups and community engagement. Thank you.
Again, as with Matthias, I might ask you to hold that thought. And could I please ask that we have some draft recommendations on the screen? I will go through them fairly slowly, and I emphasise that if there's not consensus, we don't have to make recommendations. But we do have a meeting of the mayors and a meeting of the board on Friday, and perhaps there is an opportunity. I will perhaps read each one in turn and share with you my understanding of why it's there. And based on the discussion that we've just had, I think there are at least 2, if not 3 adjustments that might be considered, perhaps more. So the lead-in sentence, and I'll speak in English. I'd be grateful if the translators could stay with me, please. The lead-in sentence is that the 14th World Congress of the OWHC recommends that World Heritage Cities should. So this would become a recommendation to the cities from OWHC. And then the first point is actually about the rights of local people. So recognise that local people have the rights to be involved in conservation and management. And I know that many of you will sit there and think, but that already happens in my city. I say again, in many cities it does not. The second point is the one that would involve work and reporting back. And that is to adopt a policy for community engagement. And based on the discussion that we have just had, I would suggest that, and I don't think we have the capacity to put this straight on the screen, but I would suggest that we add some words so that it read, adopt a policy for community engagement which is relevant to the local cultural context. Which is relevant to the local cultural context. The third one has been a recurrent theme during this week in the earlier expert workshop and in a number of presentations, and that is to consult with local people about decisions which may affect them. And again, this happens very well in some cities and not at all in others. The fourth is seeking a high-level endorsement of community input and is deliberately silent about whether that is instigated by the city or the local people. It allows for both. So that is to encourage community input to initiatives and projects. And the fifth is to instigate outreach programs which present and interpret heritage values to local people and the wider community. And this picks up the duality that was present in a number of the case studies that were shared with us today about not only reaching out to the local people but also to the wider community. So this brings in the notion of the duality of that community. Now, I would be grateful if we could take this a little bit at a time, and I will come back to the question about whether there is a suggestion we shouldn't have recommendations given that this meeting has no formal status. But before I do that and before I ask for any additions, and I look particularly at Matthias and Amarezwa. Does anyone want to ask a question? In other words, to clarify something, not to suggest a change, but just to understand something. Matthias, you're going to get 2 goes. Can we have a microphone, please?
Well, it's just a principle thing. I think it would be more sensible not only to draft recommendations for the World Heritage Cities, but also 1 or 2 recommendations for the organization of World Heritage Cities. Because when I think, as what I've mentioned earlier, the capacity building program is something that needs to be done on the worldwide scale.
I'm sorry to interrupt, can you hold that thought?
Yeah, I will. But it's just affecting the structure, you know, because these are only recommendations to the cities.
Yep. Sorry, I'm very welcoming of your input, but so that we can all keep together across 4 languages, I'm just asking at the moment, does anyone need to have anything that is on the board clarified or explained before we change it? I know what's going to happen now. I'm going to come straight back to you, having said, well, no one's got a question. Sorry, let's come straight back. So would you suggest a change?
I would suggest to add, after these recommendations to the World Heritage Cities, 1 or 2 recommendations to the organization of World Heritage Cities. Because here, with these organizations on a systemic level, you work only on the different individual entities of the cities, but I think we have also other things that must be done on the scale of the organization. So I suggest to add another 1 or 2 lines that says the 14th World Congress of OWC recommends that the organization of World Heritage Cities may be in brackets General Secretariat together with regional secretariats, and then add 1 or 2 things.
And could I ask you please what those 1 or 2 things are?
Okay, I have one suggestion for one thing. I would propose to say recommends develop, based on the needs of the World Heritage Cities, a capacity building program.
Just a capacity building program, or a capacity building program for site managers, as you were very strong about in your...
Well, what I learned from the other comments from the colleague, it might also be necessary to think of other people who need capacity building, not only the site managers.
Okay. I would ask that the meeting bear with me, because if we go into very detailed drafting, we will be here very late. But the suggestion is that there also be at least 1 recommendation to the OWHC itself, to the General Secretary and the General Secretariat and the Regional Secretariats, to develop a capacity building program based on the needs of individual cities. Okay. Professor Gala, did you want to take your comment into a suggestion with the recommendations? He's happy. Professor Gala is happy. Let the minutes show that Professor Gala was happy. Okay. Could I ask the meeting then? So at the moment we have 2 changes. One is that number 2 has become adopt a policy for community engagement which is relevant to the local cultural context. And we have another change which is adding the recommendation to OWHC itself to develop a capacity building program. Without yet actually adopting recommendations, is this heading in a direction with which the gathered scientific day participants are comfortable? Is there anyone in the room who is feeling we should not make these recommendations? There being no one, then I will take it that we are going to make Oh, Anna, can we please have the microphone over here? I'm not asking for changes yet. I'm just asking, are we going to make recommendations?
Okay, then I abstain.
Right, okay.
I had many suggestions.
No, the suggestions are fine. We will come to them, because if the room does not want to make recommendations, we can all go and have a drink before the next... Okay. So if we are making the recommendations, are you happy if I take them 1 at a time? Is that... And that, please, I think Anna is going to make another comment, so we could leave the microphone with her. Could I ask first then, in terms of number 1, is there any suggested change to number 1? I will do this the way it is done at the World Heritage Committee, and that is I will say that number 1 is locked away, and then I will adopt them all at the end with a bang of the gavel.
Then can I make a comment?
On number 1?
Well, generally, because also Yajun had already given us this food for thought, and involvement is in the mid-scale. So maybe it's just a thing on wording and what you really mean, because you can go from just informing to having shared leadership, and by now we are just saying involving.
My answer to that, and
but it will come back on the other points as well, because then we are not.
I think my answer to that is that this involvement is helpful for precisely that reason, that in a city where there is no communication, then it is a way to bring about the start, which is communication.
Yeah.
In a city where there is already an interactive process, it's also a platform to say, you can do better than this by having people more involved.
Yeah. But then it should be enhancing the current level of involvement, something like that you evaluate the status of the level where you are, that you assess if it's enough, and then you could move into higher levels.
Okay, I take the point, but what I would suggest is it's actually it's cutting across the key point here, which is that the people have a right. This is not optional. The local people have a right.
But they also have the right to not get involved if they don't want to.
Yes?
Yeah.
So are we going to change this? Okay, I'm going to, if this is on point 1, Manon, can we have the microphone down here, please?
Je vais m'exprimer en français, ça va être plus simple pour moi. Il me semble que le mot « impliqué », et ça doit être la même chose en anglais et en espagnol, mais je veux bien qu'on me corrige si ce n'est pas le cas, peut être interprété de la façon qu'on veut. Et donc, dépendamment de la ville qui reçoit cette recommandation, elle va automatiquement penser le mot « impliqué » de sa propre façon. Et donc, si pour le niveau de la ville, impliqué signifie juste donner de l'information auprès de sa population locale sur le patrimoine, c'est déjà une première étape. Mais si impliqué signifie pour eux faire participer ou avoir par exemple, comme Québec, une table de concertation où on a un maximum de parties prenantes qui sont présents, à ce moment-là, impliqué signifie ça. Okay. C'est un mot, je pense, qui est suffisamment ouvert pour avoir plusieurs significations.
Okay. Thank you. I think in the interest of proceeding efficiently, I will be a little bit interventionist to try and keep us moving. Does this get solved if we replace involvement with participate? Just on that point, are people agreed with that? No, we have an alternative suggestion from Oaxaca. Could we keep the microphones in the middle, please, so that we're not waiting? Thank you.
Creo que el punto de reconocer que la gente, creo que sería más contundente si fuera dar el derecho, otorgar el derecho a la gente para ser tomada en cuenta en la conservación y la gestión, porque ahí solo estamos reconociendo que tiene el derecho. Sería más contundente si fuera otorgado el derecho.
Okay, I think again, in the interest of being efficient, I will, unless there is a violent objection, change this to be acknowledge that local people have the right to participate in conservation and management. Okay, I'm going to move to number 2 and say, adopt a policy for community engagement which is relevant to the local cultural context. This would be helpful because this would involve each city being requested to engage, to consider this and prepare a policy. Okay. Could we please keep the microphones in the middle so that people... Thank you.
Merci. Moi, je trouve ce deuxième point un peu vague. Est-ce qu'on ne peut pas donner un peu quelques pistes comment adopter une politique pour l'engagement communautaire? En 2-3 mots, comment on voit ça?
À cette question, je pense que la demande de Mathias d'adopter une recommandation pour l'OVPM pourrait être une façon de répondre à ce point, puisqu'il recommande to build a capacity building programs for the cities. Ça peut être une façon d'aider les villes à adopter une politique pour l'engagement communautaire.
Thank you. There's 4 hands up and we are already over time. Does this problem... There's 5 hands up and we are already over time. Does this issue get solved by, if we just say prepare, is adopt the problem, or is the community engagement the problem? Okay, so here, then we'll go through the 5 then, okay? Oh, no, sorry, I was indicating this gentleman here, yeah. From Lyon.
Merci. Jean-Dominique Durand, Lyon. Je suis désolé, je vais peut-être revenir un petit peu en arrière, mais il me semble, je voudrais faire 2 remarques. La première, c'est sur l'introduction, il me semble qu'il y a un problème grammatical. Il est écrit en français, le 14e congrès mondial de l'OVPM, donc avec les ajouts que vous avez proposés, recommande que les villes du patrimoine mondial devraient, ou should en anglais, deberian en espagnol. Moi, je crois qu'il faut supprimer ces verbes. Il faut mettre le 14e congrès mondial de l'OVPM recommande que les villes du patrimoine mondial reconnaissent, ensuite adoptent, consultent, encouragent, lancent. Parce que devrait, c'est un conditionnel, en grammaire, c'est un conditionnel qui introduit un doute, me semble-t-il. On a l'impression qu'on hésite.
Sorry, sir, I will intervene.
Je propose d'être plus...
We have already changed that to acknowledge. And
Qu'est-ce qu'il dit?
This has already been changed a moment ago. To acknowledge?
Oui.
Well, sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Non, je propose de supprimer should, devrait, deberian, c'est-à-dire le conditionnel, ces verbes conditionnels qui, à mon sens, en grammaire, introduisent une hésitation. Hein, et de mettre directement les villes, enfin le congrès, etc., recommande que les villes du patrimoine mondial reconnaissent, adoptent, consultent, encouragent, lancent. C'est-à-dire, on supprime les infinitifs dans les différents paragraphes et on met au contraire un verbe positif et d'action. Hein? Est-ce que je me suis bien exprimé? Oui. Hein? Voilà. Et puis alors, deuxième point, deuxième remarque de ma part, dans le numéro 1, je me demande si, alors je me parle sous le contrôle de nos amis hispanophones, mais il me semble que la formule en espagnol ne correspond pas à ce qui est écrit en anglais et en français. En anglais, c'est be involved, en français, être impliqué, en espagnol, il me semble comprendre être prise en compte, prise en considération, ce qui n'est pas une formule active. Je crois qu'il faudrait dire en espagnol aussi que les populations ont le droit d'être non pas tenida en cuenta, mais je ne connais pas assez bien l'espagnol, mais doivent être véritablement impliquées. Je pense qu'il y a le même mot en espagnol. Ouais.
Thank you. I suspect there is an issue with the timing on the translation. I had understood, and I appreciate that that was probably preemptive, that we had altered item number 1 to read, acknowledge that local people have the right to participate. I will not, given our time frame, seek to get this corrected in both French and Spanish now, but I would ask that, Manon, we run the change past the French and some of our colleagues who are French and Spanish speakers, so that we do get the words correct. I think that thank you, sir, that's very helpful to pick up these inconsistencies. I think we have dealt with number 1. Is that not the case? Okay, we will stay on number 1. Ege.
Thank you very much, Richard. I got stuck in the conservation and management verbs only. I wonder if you'd like to add identification, because the natural, progression of steps would be first you identify and then you conserve. It comes up in number 5, but it's so late, it bothered me that that was missing there. I don't know if you'd like to discuss that.
I would not like to discuss it. I'm very happy to include it if there is no objection. I mean, look, I'd like to discuss anything, but I'm trying to get us somewhere before tomorrow. Okay, sorry, my colleague up here has had his hand up for a long time.
Una sugerencia de simplificación en la frase 1. Yo no encuentro sentido a decir reconocer que, o reconnaître quoi, o reconnaître that. Je crois que la gente local tiene el derecho, que reconocer que no agrega y le quita contundencia a una frase que debería ser mucho más simple. La gente local tiene el derecho de ser tenida en cuenta en la conservación y la gestión. No hay que reconocer nada, eso es así.
Thank you, sir. I'll take that on notice and confer with Manon, but I understood these were recommendations that would go to the cities, and I can tell you from my experience, many cities do not acknowledge those rights. So unless there is something for the cities to do, nothing changes. OWHC can take the view that local people have rights, but that is not changing the situation in the other cities. So I appreciate it's a matter of construct. At the risk of frustrating the room, I'm going to move to item 2 and say adopt a policy for community engagement which is relevant to the local cultural context. And there being no objection, I'm going to move to item 3, which is consult with local people about decisions which may affect them. And there being no objection, move to item 4, which is encourage community input to initiatives and projects. To item 5, which is instigate outreach programs which present and interpret heritage values to local people and the wider community. There's an intervention over here, please.
I'm just wondering, this is English words again, but is it to people or is it with people? Is it just talking to them what their values are, or is it actually doing it together as in a collaborative process rather than telling them? I think it's just a nuance of the sentence.
I'm happy to change it to with, but I suspect the wider community does need to be to. So that would, and again, we will work to get consensus amongst speakers of French and Spanish, and I apologise that it's all happening in English, but that is what I can moderate. Instigate outreach programs which present and interpret heritage values with local people and to the wider community. Thank you. Okay, so this is on number 5, Matthias? Yes, thanks.
Maybe we can change it to instigate outreach programs which present and develop heritage values with local people and the wider community. This is more interactive because the interpretive approach is very linear. You know, it's like sender-receiver model, and I think it's a little bit outdated.
I'm seeing no objection. Yes, there's a hand up. I'm seeing another intervention.
Yeah.
Very convenient.
A very general remark.
Sorry, is this about number 5?
It's about the word community. Because
sorry, I will come back to you, ma'am.
Yes, okay.
Otherwise, I just can't get us. Are we all good in the room with number 5 for now, please? Okay. I'm going to come back to this question in a moment. And then there was a 6th added, which is actually a recommendation to OWHC, to the General Secretariat and the Regional Secretariats to develop a capacity building program based on needs of individual cities. Is those present generally comfortable with this? Okay, now I'm acutely conscious of the word finessing that needs to be done over number 1, and I thank you for your good-natured patience and forbearance with that. I think that means we have general consensus about the 6, but we have a point, an intervention now, please. Yes, ma'am, about the word community.
Yes.
Thank you.
It goes back 50, 70 years ago, especially in Central Europe, when the people changed the places where they lived. So a certain group of people moved to the places where this heritage, previous heritage, meant very little to them. So they were not very interested in preserving the heritage, and vice versa. So it's a question, who are these people from this community, and what is the relation to the heritage? Thank you.
I think that is, that is a really profound and relevant question, which is probably best avoided by saying that the community can be many things, and it can be very localised. It can be people who live, it can be people with associations. Others more erudite than I have written about this, and I think, as I recall, it was actually raised in the keynote address this morning. So my inclination is to absolutely acknowledge that this is a genuine and substantive issue, but that it probably is not helped by trying to change these recommendations unless you take a thank you. Okay, so we'll accept that as a comment. Thank you. Okay. Bearing in mind, and I'm very grateful for your courtesy and patience with this process, which was somewhat ambitious and aspirational from the outset. The proposed process is that these words will be presented to the mayors at their meeting in workshop format on Friday morning. For those of you who still have some concerns, and I appreciate that in a forum like this there are a number of you, it is perfectly open to the mayors to change and finesse, to accept or reject, but this is what will go forward. I'm not proposing that we have a formal resolution. I'm simply saying that emerging out of this workshop, once we do the language checking, these suggestions will be put to the mayors as something that they would appropriately consider as a result of the discussions on the scientific day of the 14th World Congress. And I thank you very much for that. Yes, I think at that point this is good. Well, I don't know about those of you who arrived nice and early before 9 a.m. this morning and have sat here all day, but I feel simultaneously inspired, informed and exhausted. I challenged you to take one idea back with you. I will be taking far more than that, and I will shamelessly appropriate them into my own professional practice and circumstance. In closing this component of the Congress, it remains only for me to again thank our very generous hosts, to thank the Secretariat, particularly Manon Offray, for the enormous amount of work that has gone into arranging this scientific day, to thank all of the speakers, not only for their time, but more importantly for sharing their experience and stories, and to thank all of you for your endurance and patience. Enjoy the rest of the evening in the Congress. Thank you.